Another good chilly Florida morning to everyone. I now call the January 21st, 2021 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Board Member McCall, will you please read our commitment statement?
I would be happy to. We are the Marion County School District Leadership Team. When we come together to work, we are efficient, effective, and productive. Our three most important characteristics are dedicated, transparent, and individually responsible. To work well together, we must demonstrate respect, confront reality, and be accountable. We will always put students first, and we will leave a legacy of success.
Thank you, Board Member McCall. Please remember to silence your electronic devices, and I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this work session.
One moment, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yes, you can actually take all of these. Thank you. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call speakers' names in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last names. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. We will now begin the work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Pleasure to be here with you. I have just one important update as part of my briefing today, and I know that you all, as board members, share with me the concern and the conviction that our employees are all essential workers and that they have gone above and beyond during this pandemic. So, and I know that you all know as well that we've been working diligently to try to get our employees vaccinated. And so I am pleased to say that yesterday that an email went out to our employees that are 65 and over to expedite some vaccinations for them, an opportunity. We are partnering with Advent Health, they will provide the location to do that in the next couple weeks. And so for our employees that are 65 and over, please look for your email. We need to require that they provide their name, phone number, date of birth, so that they can become eligible to do that. So for those that are interested in utilizing this opportunity, we encourage them to do so. We know that there are other options as well, other private entities out there doing that as well, but we really value the work of all of our employees and are happy to try to provide another means for them to get vaccinated in short order. So I wanted to share that with all of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That's really, really
Yes.
fantastic. We'll make sure we spread the word.
Absolutely.
I got a question, Dr. Governor.
Yes, sir.
A couple of weeks ago, I brought before the board that we sent a letter to the governor concerning this, not just for our employees that were 65 and older, but all of our employees, because we have folk that are all frontline workers. I consider everybody that works for the district frontline workers, especially those bus drivers that are picking up these kids. So whatever happened with this letter that we were trying to send to the...
Well, and if thank you, Board Member Cummings, if the board would like to do that with me, I'm happy to do that letter with the board. I think that's important because, as you know, the governor has said we're going to have all of our workers deemed as essential workers, our teachers and staff. And the governor changed that, so would be happy to do that if we can do that together.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, very good. So I'd like to go ahead and begin and provide some context to our agenda items for today. We will begin with some updates on the social emotional learning curriculum that we've had a lot of conversation about from Mr. McGowan. followed by Ms. Kynard, who intensively supports our L300 schools, and she will provide specifically the turnaround option plan that we provide to the Florida Department of Education. And then we will follow quickly by the COVID-19 update with impacted benefit decisions by Ms. Lively, who will provide some just minor updates and its impact for us as a district. So without further ado, Madam Chair, if I can, I'd like to call Mr. McGowan forward.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mr. McGowan.
So good morning, Chair Thrower, board members, Superintendent, Attorney Powers, and Mrs. Prestipino. Thank you for allowing me to be here to provide you an update from our social emotional learning curriculum committee review process. As you recall, this stems from back in October when the board came to consensus to end the use of Sanford Harmony, and our team was directed to form a committee of not only school and district personnel, but community members, parents, to look at potential replacements for that program. So in the presentation today, my goal is to hit on these 5 topics, some of them very briefly, but I want to begin with just provide some data both statewide and locally of where our students are at. Florida's response, both through legislation and DOE's interpretation of that legislation. Why social emotional learning? I know we've had conversation regarding that and character education and soft skills. And then finally, provide a brief update of how the review process commenced, the committee members that were a part of that, and then finally their recommendation to you this morning. So the next few slides I'll go over briefly, but I wanted to set the stage of kind of where we've been, not only locally but statewide. So this slide shows a 10-year survey results from the Florida Youth Risk Behavior Survey. This survey is given to all school districts, all for high school students. It's provided by the Department of Health. And this is data from 2009 to 2019, so a 10-year trend. This slide in particular is in regards to self-harm trends, so those that involve suicidal thoughts, ideations, or the actual act of attempted suicide. And as you notice, in the last 10 years in the state of Florida, amongst our high school students, there's an increase in all 5 areas. Now, I won't spend the time, I know you have this information in front of you, so I won't spend the time going through each one. But the idea here is all 5 areas were increased, and this is from high school students directly in the state of Florida. While we don't have this data directly from Marion County, what I can tell you is our high school students did participate in this survey. So the next slide is more local for Marion County, and this is last year only, 1920. So our multidisciplinary teams at the school level, they are the team that conduct the assessments for a suicide threat. So whether that is a concern brought forth by the student themselves or a teacher or any other staff member, this team gets together, conducts a suicide threat assessment, and it's either a low risk, a high risk, and even a potential Baker Act if law enforcement deems it necessary. So you'll notice for elementary, middle, and high school, those numbers for those assessments. Now granted, some of those are low risk. So the team could do the suicide threat assessment, determine it's a low risk, there's no threat, and that's documented, all the way to, like I say, a high threat or potential Baker Act. And the bottom statistic is for Baker Acts, both on and off campus, initiated by law enforcement. And you'll notice, obviously, that those statistics increase as we get to high school. And again, so that's just kind of that reflective same data for the self-harm trends, but this is Marion County alone, and that is last year. So again, pretty significant numbers in Marion County. The next slide goes back to that 10-year risk behavior use survey. This is not in regards to self-harm trends. This is more of being bullied at school or in general students feeling unsafe. You'll notice that both of those in that 10-year span increased. The last statistic you'll see there isn't necessarily in regards to that topic, but I thought it was important because I think it directly revolves around our topic today. And this is essentially high school students that have 3 or more hours of screen time beyond schoolwork. That increased from 31% to 47%. So approximately now half of our students in the state of Florida the last 10 years are spending more than 3 hours on a screen besides schoolwork. So why is that important? Well, we know that impacts interpersonal skills, which we talked about in relation to this topic. It creates disengagement and many other factors. So wanted to include that. And then in regards to bullying specifically, this is for Marion County last year. So you may or may not know that state statute does allow for the Hope Scholarship. So if a student claims to be bullied, they can request a Hope Scholarship to attend another school through state funding. So approximately 800, a little less than 850 students in Marion County last year requested that Hope Scholarship. Now, a very small number actually took advantage of the movement of schools, but I wanted to show this number because to me that's a high number of our students that, to the point they felt unsafe or bullied on campus, whether substantiated or not, they felt the need to reach out for that. So that just kind of brings that home to Marion County.
You said there was a low number that actually took advantage of it?
Yes. So when I spoke to Mr. Ayers to confirm that, he said actually a handful, less than 5, I believe, actually chose to take advantage and move to another school. He said a lot of the conversations that he had regarding that was that the student and or the parent were not necessarily looking for that, but because it was reported bullying, then we had to issue that. And so we felt that was the fairest way to share that data, because if we were to simply look at bullying cases that had a full investigation, that number is also very small, which I think would skew what our students could be feeling.
So let me ask a question. So if there's an allegation of bullying, is it that we offer this Hope Scholarship or? Okay, so we
Yes.
just automatically offer it?
Automatically.
Every person? Okay.
Yes.
Letter sent home.
Correct. Yes, sir. So why do I go through that data? And I think this is kind of, as we move into how our state responded. So the CDC, through their analysis, perpetrators of school violence were motivated by the following 3 items: retaliation for bullying or rivalry between peer groups, gang-related activity, or interpersonal disputes. So I know those are kind of broad categories, but just trying to tie that to our data, both state and local, that we do have that need. And so how did our state respond to that? So our next section will cover that briefly. So we know, we've talked about this many times, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but we know our state legislators, after the tragedy at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, created the Marjory Stoneman High School Public Safety Act, which really had 2 aspects of that legislation. One was school hardening, school fences, et cetera, SROs, which we know, and the other side was the mental health allocation. These are findings I thought were beneficial to share with you. This is after the law was passed and in effect. This is from the State Supreme Court grand jury report from the commission that investigated the tragedy at the school. And I thought it was beneficial to share really 2 aspects of this. And that is the first, that unless we address as schools mental health concerns, that does have the potential, as the CDC stated, to potentially turn into school violence. And secondly, how do we ensure a safe climate at our schools to prevent that? And that's through 2 items. That's through prevention and intervention. Now, while I'm not here to talk about our mental health plan as a whole, our mental health plan does address both aspects of that, but for the purpose of our social emotional learning program, that is the prevention part that we'll spend some time on. So through DOE and their interpretation of that law, what they require of districts is this allocation plan checklist that you see a sample of. And the first item that as a district we have to verify as we receive that funding that we're complying with is what I have in red font. That is, delivers evidence-based mental health assessment, diagnosis, intervention, treatment, and recovery through a multi-tiered system of supports. So the next 2 slides, I'll briefly go over what our team believes is the most important aspect of that statement. And the first is a multi-tiered system of support. So we know we've heard that both academically and on the behavior side. That is where we essentially have 3 tiers on which we support students. Tier 1 is for all students. Tier 2 is a smaller group of students, and then Tier 3 is that individualized support. For the purpose of this and SEL program, Tier 1 is that universal for every student. So in this case, we're talking about K-5 or elementary students, so a program would fit the need for a Tier 1 program on that tiered system of supports. The second aspect that is emphasized through what we have to confirm for DOE is evidence-based. We know evidence-based is research that shows that through multiple different sources that the curriculum or the program is shown to be effective. So it's not just one person's opinion or one person's experience. It's evidence-based through multiple points of research. So when we reached out to Department of Education, and I wanted to address this because I know this was a question as board members you all had at one of our last meetings, was does it actually say in statute that it has to be a social emotional learning program? And from our perspective, it does not say that. What it says is exactly what I have in red font above, but as DOE has interpreted that and how they've given that to districts is that means in their eyes an evidence-based social emotional learning program for Tier 1. And after the law was passed and subsequent trainings they had with us, they verbalized that as well in some of their trainings, that when they think of evidence-based in Tier 1, they interpret that as a social emotional learning program.
With specific curriculum.
Correct. And through some of their subsequent trainings, they had actually mentioned specific programs. Now, granted, that was a couple years ago, right after the law was passed and initial guidance was sent out. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Yes, ma'am. So next we'll turn to social emotional learning. And I wanted to spend a couple minutes on this slide because I know we've had great conversations in the past. And historically in our district, what we've implemented through character education and soft skills, which are wonderful aspects of the spectrum that we believe this is on. So I wanted to just spend a couple of moments. So what we view as character education is that we're teaching students those core values to be a functional member of society. Whereas soft skills, we're teaching core competencies and skills to students for the workplace. And I think the key words there is we're teaching that. So what those words are, what they mean, how are those implemented. But our view of SEL, and as you see in the graphic below, it's more of on that continuum. Each part of this, we believe, is very important, and it all has a place. We feel that a social emotional learning program takes that to the next level, and it's the application of those. So it's not just teaching students the definition of those, but it's how does that look? How do we, as a student, especially an elementary age student, how do we interpret that? And so it's the acquisition of the knowledge, but also the application of it. So the example that I really liked when we discussed this is empathy. So if I were to ask each of you as board members what the definition of empathy is, we would all pretty much come up with a similar response, and that is understanding other people's perspectives, the ability to understand and share the feelings of someone else. But for an elementary age student, what do they do with that information? How does that look? And so a social emotional learning program takes something like empathy as one example and turns it into action-based learning. It's not just the definition, but through different activities that a SEL program can provide, whether it be one-on-one with another student or a small group activity. There's things that are enhanced in an SEL program that demonstrate through that action of what empathy is and how that can be internalized by each individual student. So again, in the research benefits of building empathy, like we've kind of making this connection from our beginning slides, is it does have proven reduction of bullying and violence. And that's just empathy as one example. So empathy, as I said, one example of many different competencies that a evidence-based social emotional learning program provides. So this is from CASEL. We'll talk about CASEL in a minute, but CASEL is the collaborative that is pretty much the gold standard for social emotional learning programs that provides that evidence-based information. And so you'll see there's 5 competencies: self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making, self-management, and relationship skills. So as we look for an SEL program, it has to be based in those 5 competencies to be research-based and effective. Okay, so the last couple of sections will actually dig into our actual review process. I'll provide some background information and then the recommendations. So under our review process, we utilized EdCredible, which is a platform that actually our curriculum department uses to go through the textbook adoption process. We wanted this to be as transparent and as open as could be, and it also, that platform EdCredible allowed us to capture the feedback in real time. We knew that this would be a long process, not one meeting where we brought the committee in. So we wanted to have a secure platform over time that they can continue to provide feedback. So EdCredible provided that for us. We requested that publishers submit CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, that they submit CASEL-aligned SEL programs for submission and review. So a total of 4 publishers submitted on the platform 5 different curriculums. So one of our publishers submitted 2, but we had 5 different curriculums for our committee to review. So who were our committee members? So we had a very diverse group. We initially invited 34 individuals. 25 participated in some part of the process. So that could mean that they attended our first meeting, they reviewed the curriculum and rated the curriculum on EdCredible, or attended our last meeting, or all of the above. So they participated in some way, shape, or form. However, when it came to actually rating each curriculum on the EdCredible platform, only 13 of the committee members participated in that rating, and then 11 of the 25 came to our final meeting where all of this information was discussed and they voted. But we had a very diverse group. As you can see, one of our goals was to have equal representation, not only from school and district staff, but also from parents and community members and teachers. So you can see that we had 6 teachers, 4 parents, and 3 community members of the 25 that participated on the committee. We asked our committee members to review each of the 5 curriculums based on the following 6 categories. School implementation, so the ease of which it could be implemented in a classroom, the appropriateness of the content, the alignment of the content to both CASEL standards and academic standards, the cost of the curriculum we knew would be an important factor, accessibility for our students with disabilities, and finally an overall rating. EdCredible then took those 6 ratings, averaged them together, and provided us what they call a summary score, which we'll reveal those ratings in a minute, but EdCredible took all their information, all of their feedback from all the different curriculums and provided an overall score. We also had the opportunity for 2 community review nights. I worked with Mr. Christian's office to advertise that appropriately. It actually got local media coverage on some of the morning news and evening news to advertise that. It was December 10th and the 11th. Unfortunately, we did not have any community members show up to either of the community review nights. However, we took the summary scores from EdCredible, all of the other feedback we reviewed from our committee members, and we had a final meeting where all of that was discussed. We had a chance for open dialogue amongst all the curriculum with all the committee members to have any final, say in any of the issues that were discussed, and then the committee members voted. So the last section here is what was recommended. So at the end of the online ratings and the voting, it came down to 2, and whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, I'm not sure which, but it was so close we brought 2 recommendations to you. So it was not unanimous that one program was selected. It came down to 2. So one is called Rethink SEL, and the other is called Caring School Community. So I've created the chart that you see, and I'll just briefly run through and kind of the differences between each. So for Rethink SEL, that is the format of the materials is online, meaning that our teachers would not be getting kits. It's all the materials, all the curriculum resources are online. Now that does not mean that when these lessons are done with students, that students are on a computer. This just means that the resources are available for the teacher online. I would envision that much like we're doing here, a teacher could share that information on their smart board or print out the resources, but it's all online. Caring School Community has curriculum kits. So they are physical kits that we would purchase and deliver to the schools, and each teacher would have their own kit for implementation of the curriculum. When we look at summary score rank, they were ranked number 1 and number 2. Caring School Community had the highest rating in all 6 categories, and Rethink SEL was ranked 2nd. And then as we go to the voting results, remember I mentioned we had 11 individuals who came to our final meeting to vote. 1 abstained from voting. So we had a tie at 5 and 5. So that's why we wanted to present both curriculums to you. It was too close to not include one or the other. Cost. So for Rethink SEL, because that's an online program, there's a license fee. It's $5 per license, both for staff and students. That is an annual cost. Professional development is included. And the current cost projection for our current number of students and staff would be right at $100,000. Now that being said, through the negotiation process with the vendor, because it's online, I can't imagine that each one of our students would need their own license, but that is how the vendor presented that information for our purposes today. Caring School Community Remember, those are the physical curriculum kits. That is $200 per teacher kit, a little bit less for the principal kit. The main difference here, that is a one-time purchase because we're buying actual physical kits, whereas the other is an online subscription. PD is not included. What I will say is the professional development in the big scheme of these numbers is low. I believe for a train-the-trainer model, it will be $3,000 to train one person from each of our schools, that then they could go back and train their staff. So that would be an additional approximate $3,000. So that current cost projection is right under $200,000. Again, the main difference between the two costs is the $200,000 for Caring School Community would be a one-time purchase versus the annual purchase of $100,000 for Rethink SEL. And then finally, committee feedback. So these are two attachments that you should have. We wanted to, again, be as transparent as possible. We have included every single committee member piece of feedback for you in the two attachments. You also see the ratings for each of the two curriculums. So we didn't want to take the time this morning to review each of those, but you do have their full feedback for your review as well.
Can you tell us what the colors represent? I see green,
Yes,
red,
ma'am.
and orange. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And it's a little misleading with the orange, but there's three levels. So green means exceeding expectations. So when the committee member rated it, they said that this curriculum in whatever category exceeded expectations. Orange means that it meets expectations, and red does not meet. So orange and green are, at a very minimum, it's meeting the expectations, and red is not. Very good question. So finally, our team, as we've gone through this process over the last 3 months and working with the committee members, again, we want to provide both curriculum options to you. And here are our recommendations of how we can move forward. One, obviously, is if the board comes to consensus on one of the two curriculums presented, then our team can begin in that process of moving forward with the contract and purchase and laying out a professional development plan. The second option is, because it was such a close vote with our committee of the two curriculums, that we could continue that review, ask those two vendors to come in, because at this point, this is our committee members coming in, physically reviewing the materials and or reviewing it online. But the vendors have not come in to allow us to ask questions at this point or to have a further review. So we could continue with that option. Or I put other, and I know that it was brought up at some of the other meetings that we've had, that if this could be something that as a district internally that we proceed with. So I'm prepared to speak to that if that's something we'd like to discuss. But from our team's perspective, those are the recommendations that we present to you today. Obviously open to any other that you may have. So,
Mr. McGowan, does your department have consensus on which one of these, if they were the choices, you would recommend? Either one that you're leaning towards that would meet our needs in Marion County?
Yes and no, Ms. Rower. So I think intentionally through this process, a majority of our group that worked on this, we tried to stay out of the process. We wanted this to be as pure as possible for the committee members. However, we did have some internal conversation, especially when there's a Steckman in her role as the mental health coordinator. Although she was obviously, she led this process for us. And with her role being that, we knew that she would have to have an in-depth knowledge of these as we move forward. So I think in general, we're torn as well. I think there's pros and cons to both. I think the idea of an online curriculum is much easier for our teachers as far as implementation. I know that also some of the feedback that our ESC department representatives on the committee provided feedback was that for our students with disabilities, the Rethink SEL, which is the online version, was very well suited for the accommodation for our students. But on the other hand, the Caring School Community cost-wise is a one-time purchase, whereas the Rethink SEL is a recurring cost, and we know that that is an undeniable, something that is part of the discussion. So I really think that from our perspective, either would be effective.
And I'm glad your department stayed arm's length through this first part of the process, but I do think it's important at some point to ask you guys as a department what your thoughts are. So I appreciate you being candid.
Yes, ma'am.
And torn. I'm feeling the same way a little bit.
I actually see the cost issue as kind of the reverse of what you're saying. So yes, while I understand it would be a one-time purchase, we also would be locked into a one-time purchase. And what if we get a curriculum that we don't like again? And we've made a $200,000 purchase of something that is not meeting our needs. And frankly, several of the comments that I read is making me, those comments are also making me lean more towards the online program for multiple reasons. The implementation with the buddy system, which I'm a huge advocate of, and I think it would be amazing for us to start thinking of fourth graders buddying with K kids. You know, all of those kinds of things are terrific. I can't imagine us bringing in a curriculum like that and throwing that on our principals and saying, you have to get this to work right now because this is a part of the curriculum.
Sure.
That's a huge logistical issue that can become a hurdle right away. And also the professional development element, I think, is significant here, that it's included in the cost of the online program. Again, we don't know what the future holds if we continue with online education as an option. We don't have that hurdle to overcome again. So personally, I feel that while the cost projection shows us that we may have an annual recurring cost, we also may be able to redevelop some of our own interior kinds of curriculum. There may be something else we like later that comes in at a different cost. I guess my only question about the online is, are we locked into a contract for 2 to 3 years, or is it, this is your cost projection based on an annual basis for 1 year? That would be my only hurdle there.
So it's $100,000 per year.
Correct, yes, ma'am. And Ms. Board Member Campbell, to your point, completely agree, and I think I see both sides of that as well. As far as, you know, contracts go, I know all that I've been involved in, they're all annual contracts. It would not be a multi-year. And I think to your point, however, about whichever, you know, option, you know, depending on the cost that you know, may be decided, because of that 1-year contract, if it's something that is not what we thought it was, then it wouldn't have to go past that year. It wouldn't, just because the physical kits we would have purchased and we have in our possession, if we ever decided to move to something else, then we could, of course, stop the implementation of that.
Well, and again, curriculum, this board member strongly believes that curriculum and anything front line with our students is where we need to focus our budget dollars. So if this is an annual cost that we're taking on to impact the social and emotional learning of our students, I'm comfortable with figuring out how to make that work. And after 2 years, we've already met option 2. It's going to cost that regardless. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Thoughts?
Well, I've looked at the material, and actually those two were the two that I was thinking of as well. I really think the content is very appropriate, and I think that was one of our concerns with the last SEL program. Who was the board member that served on this? Eric, was it you? It says there was a board member. You, Nancy?
Involved, you were
Well,
involved?
This is me, but then I was quarantined, so I couldn't attend the meeting. So I think, Eric, you attended.
Yeah, I know Reverend Cummings virtually attended a couple
Okay.
of our meetings. Yeah, I know
Yes.
that Ms. Thrower
Okay, I went.
reviewed some of it as well.
I had an intense, deep conversation with Ms. Steckman and reviewed all the materials, and I've got some thoughts, but I'm interested to hear everybody else's.
If we brought in these two vendors to really go into depth in some of this, how far time-wise is that going to set us back?
Well, I would hopefully not much. I mean, I think if we reached out to them, I don't think that part of the process would be anything we'd have to draw out over time. I think that could be maybe one meeting that we ask our committee members to come in, and maybe it's even virtual, that we do it via Zoom or something like that. And I think what I would like to ask the vendors is to go into more, you know, we've seen what our view of this and what we think it would look like, but to show us more in detail. And I know that some of the vendors in the application process for this gave us videos that kind of maybe demonstrated a lesson here or there, but to go a little bit more in depth, and then allow our committee members to ask questions. That on some of their feedback. Some of those questions we were able to address in our final group meeting when we were all together, but some of them only the vendor would be able to ask. So I don't think it taking more than one meeting that
So
we
my
can maybe get
feeling,
them.
we really need to do our due diligence on this. And I'm not comfortable at this point because I reviewed online, but I would really like to see both vendors come in and do an in-depth presentation. Then I feel like that we've had the committee, we have had community input, we have had parent input. Both of these were ranked very, very high. We bring the vendors in, then I think we have truly done our due diligence to make a good decision.
Yes, ma'am. We could certainly
And
do
I
that.
feel the same way, that we need to have a little bit more, because I saw pros and cons with both. I like the PD for the online format, but I also didn't want to give another online, have kids in front of a screen again. So there's pros and cons to both. So I like that idea as far as letting them come in and present to us.
Yes, sir.
I'm comfortable with that also, because I feel like I don't have enough knowledge, because I wasn't there, but also when I tried to listen to the videos, it was muffled. I couldn't understand anything. So I feel like I don't have a good grasp of really what was being, asked and explained. So I would also like for us to
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that if we can.
And I know throughout the process, that's one of the reasons through, conversation with you all that we extended it through winter break. It was a lot of material to review
Yeah.
with 5 different curriculums. So I know our committee members appreciated that extra time in over winter break having the online access as well, so.
So, and I would invite them to this workshop
Yes.
to hear more in depth and
Okay.
I think this needs to be, although it's a final board decision, I think the committee needs to also hear from the vendors as well.
And I want to just go, I know when we did the community, we were trying to reach out to community, I really think it was kind of at a bad time. It was during the holidays. And I think if we did like another community, reach out one more time before they bring it to us, it will help us as well in our decision-making process with this.
So
Yeah,
have
that's a
one
great
more
point.
community review night and see if anybody comes.
See if they come. I mean.
And then we've given them every
Correct.
option
Correct.
that we need to give.
Correct.
And, and it was during the holidays, it was bad timing, so maybe offer that one more time prior to
Yeah.
these vendors coming in, and then nobody can question that we did not do our due diligence with this
Correct.
process.
So just for a point of clarification for our team, since what we've discussed today is the final 2, it would only be the
Just these
reviewing of those
Just
2.
those two.
Because you guys have done the work, it's narrowed down to, it's going to be one of these two.
And I concur with my fellow.
Or well, hopefully.
I've got a few thoughts.
Yeah, actually, and I didn't say it earlier, but to be truthful, out of all of them I looked through, I can't say I truly liked any of them, but I wanted to rely on what I was going to be able to hear.
Right.
And I couldn't hear that to make an informed decision. So that's where I,
Okay.
Yes. I don't know, and you all probably noticed this too, the expense
Yes,
of all of these.
extremely.
Maybe I need to rethink my career options.
Okay.
And it also helps me understand much more clearly why Sanford Harmony has been embraced.
It's free.
It's free. And we're talking large expense, we're talking impact on teachers and professional development and making it a priority, which we have to make taking care of our kids always the priority. And it is alarming to look at Florida's numbers, but specifically Marion County's, and I'm referring back to slide 4. Maybe we could get back there. The state of our students. And when I added up the numbers of the suicide assessments, elementary, middle, high came up to 786. So these are at risk that have been identified, some of them low risk, but they got on the radar. And then you go to Baker Acts, which is the culmination of a very disturbed individual, and that's at 649. So from 786, 649, we're still struggling, what I'm kind of gleaning from that. So we can't shy away from this. We can't decide to do nothing. You know, we have to do something. But what that something is, my jury is still out, because it seems counterintuitive, like you were saying, board member Cummings, to have have kids online again. That's created a lot of these problems with screen time and what's coming into the household and never getting away from difficult situations and just having no rest. I'm very worried about our younger students, you know, that when I think of what I was doing at that age, you know, it's really, really sad, and it's scary that our children's youth is being lost. I don't know if there is, I'm always a fan of the other, because I think it encourages us to think more broadly and also to tap into all of the expertise that we have in this district. You know, fantastic teachers that have been very successful in creating caring classrooms. And it didn't cost $100,000. Those teachers should probably be paid that, but that's not the reality right now. And I'm also thinking about our textbook review and our adoption right now. You know, we always think about social studies, and that's where you teach the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the American ideals and all those things. But I'm hopeful that we can come up with some textbooks that will stand the test of time as well, and that thread in all of this, because it's easy to overthink things. And to me, this is pretty simple. And I don't think it takes a $200,000 curriculum or a $400,000 curriculum to make this happen. And so I'd like to see that some input from teachers and paraprofessionals and bus drivers and school lunch folks, the ones that the kids migrate to, you know, and that they don't have any trouble with, and they just have that empathy already. I know that sounds probably a lot messier than getting a nicely, colorfully delivered box of $200,000, but I think it's worth pursuing. So I think we do need to finish the drill and hear from these two vendors. I doubt it'll take very long to get them to come and visit us. I like the idea of giving the community one more chance. You know, the vaccine is now, you know, it's really getting pumped out, and maybe people will begin to feel more comfortable, you know. And if there's another method for the community to weigh in, rather than having to show up physically, that could be another, you know, another one of our famous surveys or something. I don't know, like even like just a synopsis of each one, and what do you think may help guide us.
And not to throw anything in, but
let's throw it all in.
If, with the new Florida standards, if the DOE does not change the calendar of textbook adoption and stays with the calendar that we have, we are going to be $1.6 million shy of having enough money for the textbooks that we're going to be required to have. Now, I'm hopeful that they are going to really take a look at that, because it's not just our district. Right. Every district is saying this. So I think that they are going to have to adjust that textbook adoption calendar that they have. Haven't done it yet, but FADS, FSBA, everybody's saying we don't have the money unless you're going to give us the money, and they're saying no, they're not, to do all of these adoptions. Our district will be $1.6 million lacking for textbook adoptions. So I think we have to take all of that into consideration. And Ms. Hurl, I like your idea of looking at textbooks that may offer something, but what I'm hearing from Mr. McGowan is, you know, we are expected to have some type of curriculum. I'm a believer in embedding it into the classroom on a daily basis. How realistic that is for everybody, I think that's big picture, but in order for us to meet the state mandate, I'm thinking we're going to have something in place. I still think that it should be embedded in the daily culture of every one of our schools. But I'm thinking for us to follow the mandate. So I think it's got a whole lot of different tentacles out there. So, but I think getting the vendors in for these two, getting the committee members in at that same workshop, will at least, the committee has chosen their two, and I think that we need to honor that decision in some way, whether we choose it or not. Let's go ahead and let's look a little more in depth.
Yes, we have to honor that, and we have to adhere to the mandate as well. I do get that, and I also really believe that this is part of creating our culture, and it needs to be a culture that everyone's on board with and that is built to last. So, Dr. Gullett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. And to this conversation, we have talked internally about that notion of it being not job embedded, but learning embedded, right? That it needs to be a natural process of what they're learning. And so we talked about, can we do this on our own? We talked about that. What does this curriculum look like? Can we create this? And so I'd like for Mr. McGowan to share some insight into what would be required in doing that, because we specifically talked about that.
Thank you. So yes, and board member recalled to address one of the items you mentioned too. You're exactly right, and that's when I referenced this is action-based learning. So are some parts of an SEL program a lesson? Sure, but what it should be is embedded throughout the day, where we're not saying, okay, we're stopping for an SEL lesson. It's, hey, we reviewed this earlier this week, and it's embedded fluidly throughout. To Superintendent's point, we did have those internal conversations with our team about, because we knew it was brought up at prior meetings about something that our district could create instead of purchasing a curriculum. And while we have fantastic people that certainly are experts in their field and have the knowledge base to pull that together, here were some of the items that we were concerned with. One, as we discussed today, the state does have us essentially sign off that it is an evidence-based program. So our concern of something that we create would not be evidence-based. Would it be quality? Yes, we would ensure it would be quality, but our concern is that it would not be evidence-based. And especially with a topic like this, as we've learned, this is very subjective. All the content of a social emotional learning program is subjective, and so we would want to rely on something that's evidence-based and not something that we might be pulling together from various resources. The other is, while I would have confidence we would do a good job of providing something of quality, it would be the sustainability of that over time. Because again, some of the members of our team that is our leadership team that have had these discussions, for us to create that would be a heavy lift, and it would take them from their regular job duties. And thirdly, there would still be a cost to do this. Now, would it be the cost of what we would pay for a program? No, but there would be costs in terms of the materials that we would use and the printing of those and whatever materials that would be associated. And then again, just the accuracy and fidelity of what we'd be doing, because we know that through a program, they're hitting all 5 competencies of the CASEL aligned, aspect. Just making sure that we would create something that's accurate to that level. Again, not that it couldn't be done, but I would just be concerned with the sustainability of it. And we know that if we were to put something together to have out, for example, next year, that we know we wouldn't be able to say that there would be evidence-based. So those are just some of our internal concerns, but wanted to share that with you.
Thank you for sharing that. I do have a quick question because you talked about the evidence base, and when I was looking at on the back, the concerns, one of the what is written here, it says the program is relatively new with no firm research or long-term studies to prove effectiveness. So,
Which one?
that is the caring school community.
Okay.
One on the back. So can you help me understand, like, if something's evidence-based, but yet before us today, it's saying it's really no firm research. I'm curious how.
Where does the evidence come?
So the evidence comes from what we rely on is through CASEL. So that is that collaborative that evaluates social emotional learning programs to validate that it is research-based, evidence-based, and aligning to the 5 SEL competencies. So what we required in this process was not that they are CASEL approved, because that's a years-long process to actually get approval from CASEL as one of their select tier programs. And as we know, in general, in the state of Florida, SEL, in terms of a solidified program, is kind of a new concept. So we couldn't rely on that aspect of it being fully approved. So we asked that these curriculums be aligned to the CASEL. And both of these, from off the top of my head, from my knowledge, Caring School Community, I believe, if I'm thinking about it correctly, is one of the CASEL approved, which means it has gone through their entire vetting process as evidence-based and research-based. Whereas I believe, and I could be mixing it up and I apologize, but I believe Rethink Ed is going through that process with CASEL. So their competencies are aligned to CASEL, but they're in the midst of the approval process from CASEL. So we didn't require that to apply for this, that they have already been approved. They could be in the approval process, because there are very few fully approved CASEL programs.
Right, and I'm going to need more clarification on this too, evidence-based versus research-based, because in the world of applied behavior analysis anyway, research-based is much more strict and specific than evidence-based. Evidence-based means that in the applied settings, in school settings and so on, that the interventions have been successful, but they haven't been tested in a laboratory setting with a lot of controls and things like that. And I lean more towards evidence-based because that's real world. When you can control everything in a lab, you can get some pretty darn good results. But when you take it out into the real world and apply it across a lot of students, then what do you get? Remind me again where Sanford Harmony was. Was that CASEL aligned, CASEL approved?
To my knowledge, they were fully CASEL approved.
That's what I thought too.
And to be quite transparent with you, Chair Thrower, yes, it was a free program, and without a doubt, and I don't know what it is now. I know when this first evolved, there were a majority of the districts in Florida that chose that. I'm sure cost was a huge factor, but what I will also say, like I mentioned earlier, once the law was passed and DOE started providing guidance on what they viewed as a Tier 1 program to meet this requirement, there were a few different programs they actually by name recommended, and Sanford Harmony was one. And I can only imagine that's what lended many districts to using it.
Absolutely, us as well.
And it was also fully CASEL approved.
Right. So again, it circles me back around to, and it may not be viable. There's so much work that goes into this in a classroom setting. And I know that we've had conversations about this from the beginning of my tenure on the school board. It's frustrating to see expensive curriculum sitting on shelves, and so how can we move away from that and get this alive and applied?
Absolutely, agree.
Well, my question is, even with like the Sanford Harmony, how much leeway did the classroom instructors have with not using certain parts of that curriculum? Were they mandated that they had to use the curriculum as it was given to them, or could they not? Could they skip lessons? Were there things in there? Because I agree, it needs to be embedded. It needs to be part of our daily culture, whatever we're doing. But if they were saying that they had to go from lesson 1, 2, 3, and they knew that 3 was bad, then we kind of tied their hands on some of this.
I would have to, I don't know the specifics, I'd have to ask Ms. Steckman on that, but I do know from my understanding, there was no mandate from us that every lesson they had to, we certainly suggested, and from my knowledge, it was, depending on the grade level, it was starting from the beginning and going through the program. I know that as we spoke about through the summer and with students coming back from quarantine, when we discussed it, the lessons were embedded in the social studies curriculum maps. That was a little bit more scripted depending on the topic and whether it was the very beginning of the year or as we got into
We agreed with that because we
end
knew
of the
that the
quarter.
kids were going to need it,
Right.
coming back from.
But I don't recall, Reverend Cummings, at any point that that they had to do every single. I mean, I think they have that discretion the entire time to not do that.
And savvy teachers always look at any curriculum with a very discerning eye and any lesson plan. And even our reading curriculum that we have right now, there are some elements of it that have replacement lessons, so to speak. I can't remember what you really call them. So again, the community needs to understand that there is a lot to this. There's a lot to this. And so in my mind, the more simple we make it, the more it will be implemented with fidelity, the more comfortable we will all be with what it is. And if it leads to teaching kids, who we are in Marion County Public Schools as a culture, what we do and how we do it, then I'll be satisfied. It'll be like the new big three. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think.
We've discussed this pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at consensus that to have them
Yes.
come in and have one more community meeting and all of that. And I completely agree with everything that's been said. The reason I spoke about the two options and not forsaking the fact that a $200,000 investment for something that potentially could sit on a shelf, I'm never going to be in favor of something like that. From a financial standpoint, but if it is a recurring cost to us that is going to impact our students, whether it's just the first year to plug a hole right now, clearly we're going to have something, and I don't know that we're going to be able to have evidenced and or research-based curriculum produced by our own teams in this next school year. So we will need to come up with some kind of option. I do like the idea of especially our own staff, our own employees who are looking at higher education and who are pursuing those academic degrees, that we know who they are. They may not have chosen their dissertation topics yet or what have you, or this may be a passion project. There may be teamwork opportunities. There may be articles that they could write together. There's potential, and I want to see that in those folks. We have a lot of employees who are seeking higher education, and so if that is a passion of any one of our employees and this might be something that would spark their interest, I would encourage them to consider it, because clearly there need to be more alternatives and to SEL types of curriculum, because we're not pleased with what we're seeing on the whole, and so there's just lots of opportunity there. So
That's a great point, Board Member Campbell. And are we ready at this point to put these two curriculum presentations on a work session, or is that putting the cart before the horse? Because we know we want to get more input first from the community.
Correct. So we'll definitely set up another community review night, and then, and I guess that's, again, just point of clarification. So I know that we'll bring in the two vendors to present to our committee members. Did you want that as part of a work session or meeting, the two vendors meeting with the committee members first,
No.
and then bringing it all together?
Vendors here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't, inviting the committee members, there's no sense in doing it twice.
Right.
Inviting the committee members to come to this workshop, those that have an interest,
Okay.
but letting us as a school board hear from the two vendors.
Okay. That's what I thought I understood, but I wanted to.
But giving the community the opportunity, one more opportunity to look at this. And if we offer that and they don't come, then we've done what we need to do to get community input.
Right, and thinking about the modalities of how we, solicit that input in these times.
So, what I'm hearing, there'll be a community meeting prior to the event zoning.
Yes.
So
And maybe
if-
when the vendors come, would 30 minutes each be enough, or do we need to do an hour each? What's your
I
thought?
would think 30 minutes
I
would
would think so too.
adequate.
That should be plenty.
Okay. We were just thinking about work session dates, and I'm seeing here that we have the comprehensive mental health plan meeting on April 22nd. So we definitely probably need to have this decided before then,
I thought it had to be done before spring break.
right? Yep. And we have a work session on March 4th. School staffing plan, summer school district, that's if needed. It's fairly full, but not terribly full. February 18th may be too soon, or not.
I don't believe so. I mean, I think as long as we give adequate time to advertise for our community review night, and have that input, I don't believe so, because I believe in a couple of weeks we could have our community review night, and then the rest is just ensuring the vendors are available on whatever work session day we choose, but I think that would be okay.
Okay, so on February 18th, right now, we have review of charter renewal, contract draft, review of school summer district staffing plan 2 of 2, operations manual committee, construction projects update, ESE, SPMP. I know we need to do the ESE, SPMP, because that's time sensitive, isn't it, Dr. Gullett, usually?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you think we can add that to the February 18th work session, having these 2 curriculum reviews?
Madam Chair, I was looking at the 18th as well, and I think that based on the other work sessions, that would be an appropriate time. I think there's adequate time to invite the vendors while we're doing the other meeting, and if Mr. McGowan
Okay.
thinks that works,
Can we
then
do like the community review?
there's some
night?
flexibility there with that.
Can we do that community review night that same week or the week prior to that?
So as close as possible. so-
Right.
Sure.
That's
And ensure that
essentially a
those
month from
community
now.
members know that they're invited to attend the work session. Perhaps it could be first on the agenda, so if we have folks that do want to speak to it, they are not having to sit here
Wait
for
around,
hours.
yeah,
And the vendors don't have to wait around either.
Right.
right. Yeah, so that can be our first topic.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah.
And we'll set
Appreciate
this up.
everything
Thank
you and your department do.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for your input. We appreciate that and look forward to bringing back more information on that. Social emotional
public
learning.
comment? Okay. Seeing none?
Okay.
Here's Ms. Kynard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair Trower, Vice Chair King, board members, Superintendent Gullett, Attorney Powers, Ms. Prestipino. This morning, I'd like to take some time to go through the turnaround option plan for closure of Evergreen Elementary if the school does not earn the school grade of C or higher this school year.
Can you say that one more time for the record and loud and clear?
I absolutely
Say
can.
if really loud.
Please.
If and only if Evergreen Elementary does not earn the school grade of C or higher, and we know school grades are typically released midsummer, this would be the turnaround option plan for closure that we have to follow and adhere to in our district. All right, this plan will guide our district in the implementation of the turnaround option plan of closure. And there are 3 assurances in this plan from the Department of Education that we must adhere to as our district. The first assurance of the plan is that the district would close the school and reassign our students to higher performing schools with a C or higher school grade in our district. Mr. Ayers is already forward planning with myself, along with other key stakeholders from the school, to look at other schools that we would transfer our students to if and only if we have to implement this option plan. Certainly one of the things that are considered when assigning the students to a school is that A, they have to be a higher performing school of a C school grade or higher, and B, we look for certainly open seats for enrollment at those schools. Transportation would be provided to our families of the students for those schools. The district will also ensure through this first assurance that the instructional teachers that our students would then have would have an effective or highly effective 3-year aggregate value added model VAM rating. The second assurance that the district will follow, we shall monitor all of our students from Evergreen Elementary that have been reassigned for the next 3 school years on a quarterly basis. The reports that would be sent to Department of Education will include monitoring points of attendance, their grades quarterly, along with progress monitoring data, specifically the type of intervention that, if they're a non-proficient student, the type of intervention that they are in, as well as the progress monitoring data points along the way. And all of their progress monitoring intervention and data would be aligned to the Florida standards in grades 3 through 5 and our new best standards in K2. The final assurance that the district would adhere to would be to ensure that our instructional personnel that have a 3-year aggregate state VAM rating of needs improvement or unsatisfactory would not be transferred to another school in the district that falls below a C. So basically one of our turnaround schools, D or F status. Instructional personnel will be transferred to other schools following our standard contract language. Again, there are several key stakeholders that I've already been working with and front-loading with through this process. Ms. Dobbins is already working in just getting out in front of this process should we need this option. Mr. Vianello and Ms. Dobbins also joined me at a recent faculty meeting at Evergreen to just answer questions of the staff. We had many instructional staff there, even some of the support staff, non-instructs, front office, guidance, all there. We were able to answer their questions, really just trying to be transparent through the process with them. In addition, support staff of the school, administrators, would also be transferred to other schools in the district following standard contract language through the processes that we already have in place. Okay. So before I open it up to questions, I just want to say that, as you know, this is my 3rd year being involved with Evergreen Elementary. I'm very passionate about this school, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank each of you. You've all been involved. You have had many prayers for us. You have been there. You have seen the hard work and dedication of the staff. Not only the teachers, the cafeteria workers have been there a very long time, from the manager, the bus drivers we have, every support staff member to the SRO that touches our students in some way and capacity. And I just appreciate the support that you've brought to one of our most critical school that we have in our district. I do believe that what I can say about every single person at Evergreen Elementary is that they have a laser focus on what they need to do, not only social, emotional, as you just heard Mr. McGowan talk about the need in our district, social, emotional first, and then certainly our academics. They are working diligently not only to teach the Tier 1 grade level standards, but at the same time closing that gap on our non-proficient students and really looking at how to reteach all of our students the standards that they're still deficient in. So they are definitely working hard on closing that gap. And I'm proud to continue to be a part of that process there. So please, questions?
How many? There's almost 300 students there, right? 2 something?
Yes, it's under 300.
And how many staff?
Ms. Campbell's probably going to pull it up, but I would say about 245, 250. Staff? No, that's students. Staff, total staff, I mean, I could break it down by instructional staff. We have like 22 instructional staff. We've hired quite a few non-instructional support staff there through TESA funding, UNISIG funding. There's probably 15 non-instructional staff members there. You have all of your front office, typical staff. There's 3 CASs, 2 administrators currently.
Evergreen 80-day count was 258.
Yeah. And Evergreen Elementary has only 5 students left online, K-5. Yes, and so the majority, right, of our students are back in brick and mortar there at Evergreen Elementary, which is wonderful.
And you can see why. It's a joyful
Absolutely.
campus. So committed to the kids, so many great things happening, but it's going to really, the pressure is pretty unbelievable. I think my current understanding, there may only be 1 5th grader that they all count, but as far as the grade, and I'm thinking, if there is anything else that you need from this board to prepare for testing, to get them there on testing day, if we need to do a quick contract with Uber, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean.
Oh, no, we're not.
Let's get them to the church on time.
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate that. And you're correct, Chair Thrower. 300 of our 500 points for our school grade at Evergreen are proficiency points. And you know that we've shared before, when Ms. Kemp was here last quarter, that due to the smaller population and size of her upper grades, we don't have a bottom quartile. We don't have enough students to make up our bottom quartile. So that's why we're only dealing with 500 points, and 300 are proficiency points.
So let me ask, not knowing exactly what the legislature and DOE is going to do with the assessment this year, because everybody's asking them to hold harmless. What are the conversations around how is that going to affect, if there are no school grades issued this year, and the VAM scores are not associated with the assessment this year? Not saying that's going to happen, but that is the request that's being asked. How is that going to affect Evergreen, and are we having those conversations with the DOE?
Absolutely, board member Nicole. I am actually on a call with some superintendents tomorrow with the state to talk about our legislative platform, and including the school grading, and on my list is external operator and all of the ramifications of the schools that are in turnaround and what that impact looks like.
Okay, so you'll have more to report?
Absolutely. Tomorrow morning I'm on a call.
Because if they're not going to use it, and I'm hoping they don't, but where does it, are we sitting in limbo? Do we have to continue with an external operator? Does the school stay open? I mean, I don't want to push the state into school grades, because I don't think that's appropriate for this year. And I will go on record saying that every day.
Right.
But I also don't want our schools like Evergreen to just sit in limbo for another year. So I think we have to address that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, and as Dr. Gollett reiterated, we are having those conversations, and we're doing everything too from our district side to ensure that we are set at the end of the school year. Should we somehow maybe not test, or maybe we test and they don't assign school grades, that we have collected all of our district assessment data for progress monitoring, as well as attendance data all along the way.
I think we
to
can
make
count
sure-
on an assessment. I think that is going to happen. It's just, what are they going to do with it?
Absolutely.
We want to know how kids are doing compared to how they were doing before, but you really onto something with having very accurate district data to be able to defend our position that we can be done with this. The external operator model was not designed to be implemented in a pandemic situation and just go on and on and on. And my hat is off to our external operator. It's a huge job. So, but we need to get past this.
And I also, what kind of communication are we having with the parents throughout this process? Because that's what's going to come back and hit us squarely in the face if we're not consistently having that constant communication with the parents of those kids.
Absolutely agreed. As you know, we had the community meeting that we had in the fall. It was not very well attended. We did have the virtual option as well as in-person option. We did have more people that were on the virtual option, including some parents. We have definitely sent home communication, written communication with parents, but we also know that if we come to this point, it would be the first time in our district that this would have happened. So I agree that we have to continue to educate our families on what that process looks like, and so that they're assured of where their students would be at for next year.
So from a parental communication standpoint, are there other tactics? Is there another way that we can reach these parents? Can we send text messages? How can we communicate with them the way they communicate? And so I think that's a global conversation, and I'm sure Mr. Christian would agree. I think that's a global conversation, even with our community meetings and things. If we're really wanting engagement, we've got to start evolving the way we're communicating, and how we often think of traditional communication is not the way folks in neighborhoods are talking. So if we're going to the churches in the community and actually having a community meeting there, or if we're going to the park and the playground and we're trying to get the folk, whatever it is that we've got to get engagement, I think we've got to be a little bit more creative. And I'm not saying that they haven't been. I'm just speaking to one meeting in the fall that's a meeting that we're planning whenever we're planning it at 5:30 in the cafeteria. if that was the tactic, we need to evolve in our tactics.
And not only with parents, but we also need to have those serious conversations with our staff as well, because there's some anxiety there. I've talked to them, you know it too, and we don't want them to get so anxious that they don't do well on any type of assessment, because so we have to kind of maintain that line of communication with them. And I agree, there has to be some different type of ways of getting that message out to the staff as well as the parents.
And that's why I like this presentation, because, you know, it's very direct.
Yes.
And we can't tell people what we don't know, you know. What we do know is that this is what the state is requiring right now. And you know, spending time at Evergreen, the teachers do really know what's going on. They're clearly aware. But you're right, Board Member Cummings, just getting them to understand that it is a one day at a time. Just keep chugging along, doing what you do, teaching your hearts out, loving the kids, and they've got a team that is advocating for them. Dr. Gullett and I have had some great conversations, you know, around this. So we are not alone in overcoming this challenge, and I think that's a good thing.
Because what I anticipate happening, if we have to get to this point, we're going to start getting the phone calls. Everybody around.
We'll get them then.
What's going to happen?
Right.
I like the way you presented this. These are the things that we can assure you that will happen to your child, for your child. They will go to a high performing school. They will have a highly effective or effective teacher. We have to start communicating those messages to them so that the anxiety level will come down. We're praying that they have a great assessment. That's what we're praying for. But we also have to be realistic in knowing that it could not happen.
And they will get transportation, which
Right.
is another big piece of this. Is there a way that just this could be communicated out to parents with if in bold, like really big?
Underline, bold, and big.
So do their parents, are they looking at the communications coming from the principal? I mean, they know who looks at it and all that. So whatever mode of communication they're looking at is what we need to do.
I'm just
Ms.
curious.
Kemp uses Class Dojo a lot. That is something that it's a two-way communication. And so they're able to get her messages. So that's certainly a way that she typically always sends any kind of notes home, any kind of messages. She can put video clips in there of things that are going on campus, since we haven't been able to have parents in the way we'd like them. And so we can certainly send this presentation home that way. I also know that we're working on, our parents at Evergreen are very good about coming when we have a parent event that includes their child either getting, you know, they're getting recognized. They're getting recognized with an award or something they've done. And so we are working on the award recognition that we're going to be having an event coming up in the next several weeks. Very socially distanced. It's going to be outside. And we're going to stagger the times. But that is certainly a way the parents come to Evergreen, as many of our schools, that's how they come, right? And so we'll make sure that we share this information at that event as well.
And let me say one more thing. I'll be through talking about Evergreen. I don't want the parents or the staff or anybody attached to Evergreen to think that we're giving up on them.
No.
That is not the message that we're saying. We're saying that we fully support and we're going to do whatever we can to help them get to where they need to be to. But we also have to have some alternate plans just in case.
Absolutely.
But we fully support what we're trying to
We're
do.
required to have them,
Yeah.
and we should have them anyway as a best
Yeah.
practice. Vice Chair King, you had?
Yeah, I was just questioning about, you mentioned that there's a letter sent home. Was that by mail or was it with the student?
It was mailed home. I think we sent them both ways. I know we sent them home to students, but again, sometimes we
Yeah, 'cause
don't
I
get a
was thinking-
response that way.
Yeah.
And so Ms. Kemp had mailed them as well.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, if something like this, it might be a good idea too, just to send it in the actual mail, because that might catch a parent's attention when they see that, to where sometimes the phone calls or other things are just kind of, you get them so much, you might, or the letter may not make it because it's in the back.
Absolutely. And we have to do a lot of individual parent phone calls there and communication. Ms. Taylor, our guidance counselor, has amazing relationships. She's been there a very long time at Evergreen, as well as Ms. McCrae, our guidance clerk. I mean, she calls the first day they're absent. And she'll call from different numbers strategically so that they'll answer her, and she knows the parents, she knows the families. And so just having those individual conversations does work well with our Evergreen families.
And they know who they are, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Vice versa. Thank you very much,
you.
Ms. Kiner.
Thank you.
Yep. Any public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to COVID impacted benefit decisions for 2021. Ms. Lively.
We are tabling.
That's your table.
Welcome.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, ready? Okay. All right. Good morning, Chair Thrower, board members, and Mr. Powers, Ms. Prestipino, and Dr. Gullett. So we are here today to give you an update regarding COVID matters. As it turns out, Blue Cross has approached us now that we have become self-funded effective January 1st, and they have asked us to complete a election form as to where we would like to go moving forward with regards to waiving certain preventative cost shares on the plan now that it's our self-funded plan and our money. So some of those items would be services related to the COVID preventative treatments such as testing, vaccines, some of the authorizations for the subacute facilities, as you see, the skilled nursing and rehab, and teledoc services. The caveat with teledoc services is that it waives not only just the COVID-related visits, but all of the visits, which would help keep people from having to go physically to the providers. And those teledoc visits, I believe, are cheaper to the plan in the long run as well. Just to point out that as a fully insured group, those cost shares were waived through December 31st. And now they are asking us, with the new plan starting January 1, what would we like to do?
So, good morning all. Thomas Buss from Barrett Liner and Buss. Thanks for having us today. As Lori mentioned, so what's the financial impact? We shared with you in your last presentation, claims through September, COVID impact was about 880,000. We've seen a spike, as you see the number here in the first bullet, about 2.4 million. I don't want everybody to be concerned about that, and here's why. The differentiation between that September data and the December data is largely driven around inpatient claims, right? It's the bigger, I've been in ICU for a month, I was on the vent. We actually had one death, right? Total of 70 inpatient claims since the onset of COVID for Marion County Public Schools benefit population. So while the number looks scary, what I wanted to provide some reassurance around is the bulk of that is this hospitalization piece. We suspect the vaccine, as it continues to roll out, is going to aid in that number as we've seen the curve from the actuary come down. So while the employee cost share is waived, it's important to remember with our transition to self-funding effective January 1st, this is a planned impact and a financial liability that we need to be cognizant of. So as we continue to study the trend, the actuary wanted to provide reassurance as we've gone back to her with this updated claims information. If you remember, her name is Sharon Leach on our actuarial team. She's done a great job. Her reassurance for the forecasted funding of the plan for 2021 is such that she feels very confident that as you've already projected your funding levels for next year, this year now, that we're still in a sound financial position. The number I want you to be familiar with is 3.6% of the funding rate for 2021 is a COVID-related factor. So she knew that going into it. We knew that there'd be a spike in the fourth quarter, and we hope to see that certainly come down as we continue into 2021. So not to be alarming, but to be educational for your knowledge of where we are and reassured from the actuary's position.
Okay, so to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccines and where we stand, Florida Blue has notified us that the COVID vaccines have been added permanently to the plan. There'll be no cost for the serum, as we know, that will be covered by the federal government. the plan will be absorbing the cost for the administration of the shot. So if you go to CVS or your personal physician, there is a cost for them to administer that, and that portion would belong to the plan. The employee cost share for that will be waived, so there will be no deterrent for them to go in financially and get the vaccine. And it's similar to the model we use now with flu shots. If you want your flu shot, you go, it's free of charge. So basically, what we need today is your decision on regarding continuing to waive the employee cost share throughout the end of the federally declared public emergency. And we do have a form called the COVID-19 benefit form, which we've prepared to put on the January 26th agenda. Mr. Powers has reviewed it to ensure that he's comfortable with the document, and it will be prepared for your signature, Ms. Thrower. And we just need consensus today if you're in agreement to continue to move forward with waiving those cost shares.
Thank you. Board?
I
Absolutely.
think that's the right thing to do.
100%. We can afford it. Our employees deserve it. And it's just part of our ongoing support and commitment to them. And it's always so good to see both of you. It's very reassuring to know that this was projected anyway and that it was factored in. That's just great planning. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Certainly.
Okay. And we will be back, I believe, at the beginning of April to update how the new self-funding plan will be running from January up and through closer to that point in April, and then we'll be giving updates so you can see how everything has transpired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Public comment? Being none, all right, we'll move on to board concerns. Dr. Gullett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you again for your time this morning. I just want to take another minute to echo sentiments that were shared by all of you about Evergreen. Every time we talk about Evergreen, I know it makes the staff a bit nervous. To your point, Board Member Cummings, I think that there's always concern. And so I just want to, as the superintendent, say how impressed I am with the commitment of our staff, our team, everyone out there in the community have wrapped themselves around Evergreen. And we are pushing more support out. I've said, tell us whatever you need, we're sending people out. And strategically, they know the families and the students, they know them intimately. So we are doing everything we can to support them. And I just want to thank everyone out there for all the work they do, as well as our other schools, but especially Evergreen. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Attorney Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. From the legal department, we have, I just wanted to report to the board that we are making excellent progress with the superintendent and her cabinet on the Neola policies that you've been requesting, and everything is going quite well with that. And secondly, we, as of this morning, actually have a signed agreement for canvas and structure. We were able to work out remaining kinks and actually able to save some money to boot. So everything worked out very well, and we are content with that progress. Apart from that, I don't have anything else to report, and sometimes no news is good news. But
Caught up for now.
thank you very much. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Yes, getting Canvas is wonderful for our district, and I do want to give a personal shout out to your paralegal, Terry Brown, for identifying $25,000 worth of cost savings within that contract. And I think that just shows a personal commitment to the success of the district, which ultimately is the success of the kids. So
Thank you.
hats off to the legal department. Nicole, Ms. Prespatino.
I have two things. If all board members can bring their laptops to the next work session so you can get updates, and also the Public School Advisory Committee that you guys had taken off of the committees needs board consensus to add it back to the committees.
Yes, sounds like there were reasons that we weren't familiar with.
Correct.
And some tweaking and adjustment that needs to be done. So, Board Member Campbell, have you ready to get to work? And
Well,
then
there's from what I understand, we just need to add the committee back, but it is still a non-functioning committee. It still will not serve a purpose, and it's still not, but it needs to stay on our list of committees so we don't lose it.
Sounded like you had some ideas, too, to update and modernize.
I did, and I've spoken with Attorney Powers, and based on current climate in our community, now is not the time. I believe, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Mr.
Sure,
Powers.
yes. We have, that committee serves a purpose mainly to, well, among its purposes, is to ensure that we coordinate on interlocal agreements. Now, we've gone through quite a period of time in which there was debate and discussion regarding the interlocal agreements. There was litigation surrounding some of that. That has mostly now worked out. That's over. But in the process of doing that for quite some time, that also meant that we developed quite a bit of the policy that needed to be developed in the right ways. So the work is kind of done, and it's also perhaps at a point which we don't want to go in and tinker with something that is functional as it is. So that committee hasn't met for a while, and when the interlocal agreements need updating, that'll be a time in which we need to meet further. If any of us find that there's a memorandum of understanding that needs to be addressed or added, then that would be an appropriate time. For right now, the old maxim of if it ain't broke, don't fix it seems to be applying, and there's those interlocal agreements, I think, are fairly well understood by all, and we haven't had any debate or discussion that's been needed so far. And I think that it is appropriate, either later this year or next year early, to address perhaps having that committee meet just so that the players, each of the players that are going to be on that committee, are able to reconnect and perhaps develop a positive rapport. But from a content perspective, I'm not sure that there is active work to be done. And I am, not just for my personal opinion, but I believe that most who would be involved in that committee are reluctant to look for work to be done by the committee. So I can't speak for everyone, but I think it's something that can be readdressed soon, but it's not terribly active at the time.
Great.
So that it goes to the original point of why we were discussing it. So I think we need to leave it on our committee list. I'll be fine with still being assigned to it, but it is still an inactive committee.
Okay, and it's important to have these updates on these committees to know exactly where we stand and, why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you for your due diligence in looking into it, Board Member Campbell, and thank you for what you've done. Okay. I just have a couple of things. Just wanted to share that at our next work session, which will be February 4th, we have on the agenda the review of school summer, already, district staffing plan, first of two, fiscal year 2020-2021 budget update of December 31st, 2020, review of charter school renewal application, review of ESE SPMPs, recommended instructional materials for adoption, and the annual investment report. So that should be a pretty comprehensive morning for all of us. And then I'll just reserve the rest of my comments till the end, but I wanted to make sure I did update on our next work session. So let's start with Vice Chair King today.
Me today.
We'll just go that way.
Yeah. I don't want to blindside Dr. Gullett, and I don't think I will because she's seen some things come across. I don't know if you guys have been hearing anything about transportation or anything
Yes.
lately. And the only time we can talk about it is, in front of each other. I would like to request a workshop so that maybe we could really eyeball this thing and see if we can maybe work together to come up with some good solutions or something to make sure that our students are getting to school on time and stuff. And I understand it's so difficult right now with our bus drivers, and COVID and students, but surely there's got to be a way for us to be creative and figure out a way to get our students to school on time, or at home. So that's all I was requesting for today.
Okay, and I did speak with Mr. Vianella briefly this morning, and you're welcome to come up, Mark, and share what you shared with me regarding what the plan is, because we're all getting those emails, and we all know that even in a healthy year,
difficult.
keeping bus drivers, yes, is a challenge, so.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Thrower, and thank you, Mrs. King, for bringing that up. And we do realize that you have been receiving multiple emails from various parents. Mrs. Rora is working on a solution for this. We have forwarded all of the emails, all of the concerns. Her and Mr. Leppert are aware. You will receive, most likely by the end of the day, a response from Ms. Rora. It'll be sent to all school board members with a plan. But certainly, Mrs. King, if you would like for us to bring this to a workshop to further dive into the topics that will be addressed in the email, we can certainly do that as well.
Without knowing what we're going to see, can we just leave it on? And then if we feel like we can take it off, we could. I want to leave that on there because if our students are not in our schools to learn, I mean,
Or
they gotta-
getting there very
That's what I'm
late.
going to say. They got to be there because even if it's just they're late 10 minutes a day, if you add that up over a week, it's 50 minutes, and an hour, it's over a month we could be gone 3.5, 4 hours. So
And I think that a greater conversation is recruitment and retention of these bus drivers. I mean, because that's part, and obviously we
we'll
have.
save that for a workshop. So
Right.
that's why I
Right.
think that's what we probably need that workshop for, is we can address and come up with some solutions to what we're.
And in the meantime, we're talking about it now too, so that we'll hear from the community, I'm sure, and from other interested folks, their ideas of what can be done. But yes, it has been an ongoing problem, and now our bus drivers are very nervous because a lot of them are older, they're retired, and it's easy to say if you were going to work anywhere during this pandemic, Marion County Public Schools is a pretty good place to be working because, a lot of folks don't get, time off for COVID-related, past whatever they were providing, by the government. We've done a lot to take care of our employees, but that doesn't help you if you contract COVID, and driving a bus is very challenging on the best day, and now we're trying to make sure that the kids understand they need to keep their masks up. And that's, to me, and no one likes to write discipline referrals. However, if it is our policy that kids need to wear their masks and keep them up on the bus, if they're not, bus drivers need to follow the code of student conduct, right? And make sure that we're keeping this very, very serious. We sit here and wear masks all morning. You wear them enough, you get used to them. They're part of your wardrobe. But that's
So our bus drivers are on the list. I know right now it's 65 and over, but all of our bus drivers, everybody that works for the school system, 65 and over, are on the list for the vaccine.
Yes, ma'am. We have just over 400 full-time employees that are 65 and older that receive the communication.
Are our bus
All
drivers
employees.
considered?
They're an employee.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Talked with
All
President
employees.
yesterday. He said that,
Yes,
he gave me that same number, 400 something.
yes,
And
405.
include the bus drivers, custodians, and
All employees.
everybody.
That's correct.
And I'm happy to work with Dr. Gullett to draft a letter to the governor, but I almost feel like at this point, our local advocacy is starting to take hold. Board Member Cummings, thank you so much for what you're doing in the community with the drive-through. Yes, wasn't it on yesterday at New St. John, right? Pastor Brooks, thank you very much. And so we are making some headway finally, and if we feel like a letter to the governor just to reinforce what we're doing and what we still need, that,
I think it will. And the reason I say that, we know we're hitting the 65 plus,
yeah,
but there's our other staff that we need to stand up for and stand behind.
we sure do.
This issue.
Because they're going home to older family
Correct.
members.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I think I'm hearing that we do want to add it to a work session. Okay, and we want to do it soon. So do we want to add a work session to talk about this, or can we fit it into February 4th? And that to me doesn't feel soon enough. I don't know how you guys feel. Let's look at our calendars.
Well, that's our next work session.
I know, but we can add one if we need to. Because this is very time sensitive, and maybe we'll feel differently once we get an email update this afternoon. But we may want to look at adding one, because we can always cancel it if we feel like
Well, you have to think about the time to advertise.
Advertising, I know.
Unless it's an emergency, and I don't think this qualifies in the.
I don't know.
Well,
And there's always an analysis that goes into whether it's an emergency
Emergency
or
or
not.
not.
Right.
Just because it's pressing doesn't.
Well, it's safety.
Yes, so.
It's very much safety, and some drivers, I think, are driving 5 routes or something.
Right.
You know, I think it's pretty urgent.
I think that's a,
I don't know, what are your thoughts, Dr. Gullett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I'll support whatever the board would like to see. Certainly, we will provide an immediate response and some more information today, as Mr. Vianello shared, but I'm looking at the 4th as well. So if you'd like to do it sooner, we'll make it happen, of course.
can we just go ahead and schedule one and let's get that done and get it out of the way and devote that time just to that issue?
Right,
Just bus transportation.
yeah.
Because it's not gonna stop with us getting the communication, and the parents need to have some resolve to it as much as we can give them.
Right. What would the notice need to be to do it as an emergency item?
Trustee Pino, you know the answer to that?
48 hours.
So is that business days, hours, or just hours?
I'm curious, could we do it on Tuesday before our school board meeting, like say at 4?
I think some of us are meeting with,
Yes, we have staffing plan.
Oh, on that day?
Some of us.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
What about Monday, the 25th?
That's not a long time to get it in to advertise.
It's today's Thursday.
And we have to send it to them.
Right, right.
what about the 28th,
which is Wednesday,
Thursday?
Thursday, that's fine.
Okay, that's agenda review for me, but we could, and then there's the Mary Sue Rich opening.
It's a groundbreaking.
Yes, groundbreaking.
If we did it at 9, we could probably get it, it shouldn't be a 2-hour meeting.
No, but that's agenda review as well. It starts at 10, and normally we meet at 9:30, so.
Can they do a general review later, after that afternoon? It's normally like an hour or so.
Or, Mr. Powers, as you know of right now, or I can meet with you after agenda review if needed, because I usually meet with him at 9:30 and then agenda reviews at 10. But we could meet at 9 to discuss transportation on Thursday, January 28th, from 9 to 10.
Okay,
Does that work for y'all? Good?
sound good to me.
Okay, and then will someone send an invite out, Ms. Prespatino?
That gives Ms. Rohr a chance to,
Get her, yep, yep. Because we're going to need the community's help in this too. You know, we can problem solve a lot internally, but I think we said at the beginning of the school year, any parent that is able, without too much disruption in their morning and afternoon routine, to bring their kids to school, create some carpools, to take some of the stress off our buses, it's back. We do need as much support as we can get from wherever we can get it.
because we know we have bus drivers, bus aides, that they're affected by COVID just like anybody else is. And and then we have a shortage of bus drivers as well.
Yes.
So it's just compounding, and then with the influx of kids that have gone back to school this semester.
Right.
So it's almost beginning to be a perfect storm for this to happen.
Yes.
So,
And it also makes the contact tracing more complicated because
Indeed.
it's kids that don't usually ride that route, so there's not a seating chart for them. And then if they're coming back and doing 3 runs or more, it just is, yeah. So, okay, well, we've got a good plan now to come together on it. And thank
But
you,
we-
Mr. Vianello, for
we also
taking
need
the
to
lead.
tell them, we need to let transportation know thank you.
Oh, yes.
Because they may be getting them there late, but they're getting them there. And I know some of those drivers are driving, like you say, 4 or 5 routes,
Yep,
trying to get these kids to school, so
yep.
we have to figure it out.
And that's where it begins. That's where it begins. If we can solve this problem and get our kids to school on time, regularly, in a good frame of mind to learn, that's money in the bank right there. So, thank you, Chair King, or Vice Chair King, for bringing that up. Okay. Board Member McCall.
Yes, going back to the vaccine issue, the coalition, the North Central Florida Coalition, did have Chancellor Oliva on the call Monday, or a week ago, and he said the best thing that every community could do, because this came up, was to work with your local health departments. And many are doing exactly what we've done, and with good results. So thank you, Dr. Gullett, for reaching out to Mr. Lander. I want to publicly thank Rondo Fernandez, who he and the FCA executive team, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, had their first annual breakfast this morning, which I and Mrs. Campbell were in attendance. It was a tremendous testimony to some great things going on in our schools, and my husband was a member of Fellowship of Christian Athletes back when it was Ocala High School. My son and both my daughters, and now my grandson. And so I see what it does. And we haven't had Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Marion County in a very long time. So I want to applaud them and say thank you, because they are taking these students where they are and loving them, sharing the gospel with them, and really having an impact in their lives. And I just want to thank them for bringing Fellowship of Christian Athletes back. Grace Daly, who is an English teacher at Liberty Middle School. You know, she's one of our top athletes in Marion County. She played, was it?
WNBA.
Yeah, but
She played at Lake Weir.
at Lake Weir, and then was at Tennessee? Where?
Tulane.
Tulane. Had a wonderful career. Boy, she's on fire with it. And they are having these FCA huddles. Forest High School's got 80 kids coming. They've had to open up their gym. Liberty Middle School, they're finding bigger places. So it is a great way to nurture our kids. And I just want to say thank you to Rondo Fernandez and the team for a tremendous testimony this morning. And the room was full. It was packed. So I think we're on a good track in Marion County with FCA coming back, and I love that. Also, just briefly, as I'm the board member that sits on the Public Education Foundation, I just want to say I know Mrs. Zanetti sent an email to invite all of us in person to Golden Apple. The foundation has gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure that the gala is successful but safe. And I know that we all received the invitation digitally to watch it. I have chosen to, I don't want to be a part of them having to look at a different way to social distance, because I, as a board member, felt like I needed to be there. So I've told Mrs. Zanetti, thank you, but I am watching it from the comfort of my home, and I really would encourage board members to think about that, because they have gone the extra mile to make sure that we celebrate all of our teachers and that we can all watch it live. I love Golden Apple. It's absolutely my favorite night of the year. But I think we need to be role models and practice what we preach. And she's worked hard and her team's worked hard to make this a social distance experience a very different Golden Apple. So I would just encourage us to really think about, we don't really need to be there. I think we can send notes and show support that way, but I choose to watch from the comfort of my home so I don't become a problem with the social distancing. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. And that's my report.
Thank you. Yes, and I was going to bring that up as well, and my hat is definitely off to Judy Zanetti and her team to go from a over 500 participant event down to, I think, 54 or 55 is definitely an undertaking. The focus has always been on the awardees, not the attendees. I like what she's done to ensure that each important department and person has the opportunity to attend digitally and also in person. I'd like to get your thoughts as the board chair. I'm thinking that it might be a good idea for me to go to represent us rather than having all of us going to represent the board. It is a very, very significant event in a teacher's, life, and I certainly want our teachers to know that, we're willing to have one of us show up in person. I could go either way, but I am leaning towards attending as the chair, and anyone else that was in this seat during this time, I'd happily, say that I'll watch it from the comfort of my home.
Ms.
Yes,
Farrar, I did email Ms. Zanetti last evening and tell her that I was planning to attend now that we have been given the opportunity to attend in person. And I was going to make it a part of my comments today, too. Personally, this is going to be a personal conversation here, but understanding the venue where it has been in the past, and I meant to make a phone call this morning to see if that venue was even available, and it may not have been. I understand there's costs involved there. My question is, we've gone from a venue that holds 600 plus, and understanding socially distance is necessary, to a venue that holds only 100 or 200 people, so we can have 50 people in the room. I don't want to get into personal feelings about event planning right now, but I understand it needs to be socially distanced. I understand we want to be careful, but I also feel that I am a little bit disappointed in the year that our teachers have had to go so much above and beyond whatever they've done this year to accommodate their students and all that they've done to teach this year. Some of them have strived for this Teacher of the Year nomination from their school for a long time, and they've longed for the opportunity to get all decked out and walk across that stage. And maybe that's the goal that they set, and now some of them have achieved that goal, and yet the opportunity was not presented the way that it has been in the past. I understand COVID is what COVID is. Frankly, just personally, I'm tired of COVID as an excuse for everything everywhere, but we'll leave that where it is. I am grateful for the opportunity to potentially be there. It has always been about the folks there, but I received a phone call this week from one of our Golden Apples asking for assistance with a speech, because I'm a speech teacher, and that's what I do, and I help with effective public speaking. And when that person was told on Saturday that that the school board members would not be in attendance, the Golden Apples, I believe, were shocked, frankly. I can't speak for them, but that was kind of the impression that I received. So certainly if it pleases the board and you all choose that it would be best for only one school board member to represent this board, or how you want to look at that, I will change my attendance to the event. But I am grateful for the opportunity to be there to share with our best and brightest. And again, when I think of event planning, I think of all the years that I've been a part of it, and how elected officials are some of the very first people you consider inviting, and that you think of them in an esteemed position to be there. Certainly this is not about elected officials at all. It is all about those Golden Apples, all of those Teachers of the Year, all of those Rookie Teachers of the Year. This event is about them, and it needs to be about them. It's just unfortunate that it has happened the way it has.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. Yes, it is difficult, and I'm reminded of the high school graduations, that looked so different last spring, and college graduations. There's probably every person in this room has been affected in some way with a celebration being altered, because of COVID-19. And I'm glad that you are recognizing that it is about the teachers and it's not about elected officials. I am grateful that we were all invited to attend virtually, and I understand that they were trying to include as many direct participants as possible. And I feel for the teachers that, are not going to get a chance to walk across, that stage. My son-in-law, graduated with his law degree with absolutely no procession. So we've all been affected. I'd like to just get some consensus here so we know how to proceed on what you think we should do about this at this point.
I personally, I saw the work. I know the work that Mrs. Zanetti has put into doing this virtually, and to making sure that it be a wonderful event as it always is. I personally won't be going because I want to support what she's put in place. It's not about me or anything. It's about those Golden Apple teachers. And I think it sends a bad message if I go. I think you should go as a board, as the chair.
I think the chair,
I think the
that
chair
is-
should go. I think it sends a bad message when we just had a conversation maybe a couple of weeks ago about basketball games and things of the such. They just instituted voucher programs for the basketball games and these sporting activities for all of us. And we have a great time when we go as a board. Truly, we do. Our families, our spouses, we're there. I just think this is, for me, this is not the year for me to do that. I think I need to support Ms. Zanetti's and her group and the Public Education Foundation on all the work they've done to make sure that we have a safe event. I'm looking forward to future events. I still celebrate all the golden apples that have gotten this honor. I know that some of them I pray that's not their only goal to just be a golden apple. I pray that their goal is to be great teachers, but we're going to celebrate the ones that do get to be golden apples. And so I think you should go as the chair and represent the board, but I don't think I don't need to be there. I don't have to be there for that. I can celebrate them as well from my house.
Thank you for your input, Board Member Cummings. Ms. McCall.
I think it would be appropriate as the chair to show the support of the board that you go.
Yeah, I respect Ms. Zanetti's hard work. I can look at the past, what she's done, and she has always treated dignitaries with great respect and has always invited us there and had special seating for us, and everyone's
In the front
felt
row.
special, and wherever she had you. This year, unfortunately, there's a pandemic, and Ms. Zanetti and her team had to make tough decisions. And where did she have to draw that line? Is it the board of directors? Is it the sponsors? Is it the administrators? She had to make some tough decisions. And
Chairman of the board will not be there.
Right, the chairman of the
foundation.
foundation board will not be there. So there has been tough decisions, and I look at us as a board and I'm like, why are we causing more frustration to our employees that have been working hard this year? And then because we didn't get invited to a party, that's our discussion. I think we probably have better things that we should, as some say, we have better fish to fry, other than this, that we need to be focusing on. So I understand, I respect Ms. Zanetti's and her team's decisions to keep our teachers in that event safe. I do understand as a chair if you'd like to be there. And I do feel it is extremely important that Dr. Gullett's there. I mean, she is their chain of command. She is their leader. Everyone's going to know who Dr. Gullett is. Will they know who we are? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think Ms. Zanetti, she did a great job, and I'll leave it at that.
I think I'm hearing from all board members that we do have a consensus. It's a sadness, but this is the grace and compassion piece. It's easy to say the words, but it's not always easy to put them into action. It does require tough decisions and grace and compassion. So, okay, I think we know where we are with that. Okay, and you were done, Board Member McCall, correct? Okay, we'll move on to Board Member Cummings.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that up about the golden apples. That kind of segue right into where I want to kind of go about our next discussion. Before you know it, it'll be graduation time, and you mentioned it already. We need to kind of start having those conversations about graduation as far as planning. We don't know where we're going to be as far as with this pandemic, but we need to start having some ABCs options for graduation. And prom. And because we don't want that stuff to kind of get to us and then we're trying to make knee-jerk fast decisions, let's go ahead and start planning that now. Mr. McAteer and his team and all those that were there last year, they did a wonderful job. And we had excellent graduations, and we were able to participate in our graduation for our schools. But we don't want to wait to the last minute to start planning that. So I'm hoping we can go ahead and start that. And again, even with this golden apple thing, this sets the precedent for us as a board that we make rules, we abide by the same rules that we're that we're setting, and that we kind of follow those things. So I appreciate you guys on that one. Other than that, I really didn't have anything. I really don't have anything. I'm just going to encourage everybody, please, and I say this every time, please do not get complacent with this pandemic. Our numbers have not flattened out. They haven't dropped. They're still getting bad. I still getting reports.
We've had the spike we expected.
Yeah. So, I mean, so still, let's be careful. People are dying. People are dying behind COVID. And at one point, I knew nobody that had COVID and had died. In the past few weeks, I'm going to more and more funerals. I'm dealing with that kind of thing. And so it's not something that's far away in distance from us. This is right up close. So let's still be safe. I drove by a bus stop the other morning and some kids, I pray they didn't get on the bus stop. I pray they didn't get on the bus the way that I saw them at the bus stop. So in transportation, make them wear their masks. Put on those masks, because you're the ones that are getting infected with this. So please, let's heed to what we said we're going to do, and be accountable. So.
And they have to keep their eyes on the road, so they don't have, they can't be monitoring their rearview mirror all the time to make sure that kids have their masks up. And kids, if you like coming to school and you'd rather be at school than home online, then it is your responsibility to make sure that you're wearing your mask properly. It's not us telling you what to do, it's asking for your help and for your support. We all have a role to play in this.
And it scares, this is what scares me. And this is just a scenario that I was just sitting thinking the other night. We have kids that have been in a classroom that have tested positive, and we sent people in the classroom that they were in home. What about the kids that they rode the bus on, that they rode to school with on the bus? Did we send that whole bus home? Because on the bus it's a more confined area, and the spray is just as compact. So, I mean, we're people, we parents, I'm talking to the parents, please have these conversations with your kids. If you don't want to have to take off work to be home with your kids, put them on the mask. Do what they need to do. Let's be safe till we get out of this. Again, we're close, but we're not there, and we don't know when these kids are going to get shots. Let's just do the smart thing, do the right thing. So,
Yeah.
That's my soapbox.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings. Board Member Campbell.
So I was going to touch on that just a bit, because I've touched on this multiple times. I'm going to kind of go in reverse of what the things were I was going to say, but I'll piggyback off of what you're just saying. We aren't removing students who have been close contacts on buses. Maybe we are, but it may not be the large numbers that, however, those students, I believe the case is still zero. I'm going to say that again, that the health department in the contact tracing of all the students that we send home in classrooms because of a positive case in a classroom, the classroom transmission rate is still zero. So we continue to remove students for extended periods of time, and they've done it for 6 months now. So while we haven't been dismissing these kids off of buses, we have been dismissing them out of classrooms and still have zero transmissions. So we could have been removing them from buses too, but I don't know that that would have changed anything, frankly. And I'm not going to belabor that point, but I will continue to bring it up, because the health department told me, please, board members, when you're on your calls with the health department, ask them if the number has changed. But in all of our contact tracing and all of the removing students out of classrooms because there was a positive case in their classroom, there is not a transmission in those classrooms. Okay, now I want to get back on positive. So I did attend the FCA breakfast this morning, and it was amazing. I'm going to recommend, hopefully, that they won't do it quite at the time that they did, because whenever you have a cousin or husband who is a character coach and a school board member who wants to attend, and we both had to get our kids to school in car lines, it was quite difficult. So I did have to attend just a little bit late. Nevertheless, it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I heard when I was in a board meeting in the audience last year, a group of gentlemen who came forth, and I believe Reverend Cummings has been working with them, and they were very adamant about bringing quote unquote prayer back into schools. And I said multiple times in community meetings that I held prior to be sitting here I said, I would love for you to come and see what actually is happening in our schools. If you want to be involved in spreading the gospel in our schools, learn what is happening already. And FCA is a prime example of that. In the school that Ms. Daly mentioned today, they're meeting every day of the week. So there are opportunities for our students to be a part of that kind of gospel message being presented. And FCA is that catalyst to drive that message. And so I am grateful to Rondo. Frankly, it was unbeknownst to me that FCA was not even that had been dormant in Marion County for a long time, because I too was a participant in FCA in Tennessee. I actually got to hear Tom Landry speak one time when he was still a coach, and it was amazing. I'll never forget my FCA opportunities that I was given, and so I'm grateful that our students have that opportunity, thanks to Rondo and the team and all of the other folks who are in the room today that hopefully will offer additional support so they can continue to grow and offer all the things that they're going to do. I did want to come back to a point that I had brought up last time, and it was about committees. I know we kind of talked a little bit about committees, but even if there aren't going to be changes to the committee structure right now, and so I did specifically ask, as you guys have all heard, I would love to be a part of an active committee, and that is not the case at this juncture. The two we just discussed earlier, the Public School Advisory as well as the Site Selection Committee, is the other one that I've been assigned to, which obviously we already have the site chosen for the next school we would build, so that's also a dormant committee. I would love the opportunity to serve on one as a brand new school board member, and I'm not certain if there will be changes made. Ms. Thrower, has there been a decision on any changes? And I'm just going to make that a rhetorical question for just a moment.
Yes.
If there aren't going to be changes made, then I would like to ask as a board that we put together some kind of plan as to when those changes are made on an annual basis. Because, as you know, we tend to have rotations every other November. There may be new board members joining, and if it starts in a school year, or if it starts in a calendar year, or if it starts in November, I think that would just benefit the new school board member coming on board to know what that assignment would be, and to inherit the previous board member's assignment may not be the most perfect fit for whomever that might be, and being in that role, obviously now in two dormant committees for the next year, I would love the opportunity to be a part. And I had mentioned previously, I know that a couple of our board members are serving on up to 3 active committees, and so I just kind of, I've served on the Public Ed Foundation board before, I've served on the Community Council Against Substance Abuse before, I have an insurance and interest committee just because I'm a strong proponent of self-insurance, and code of student conduct as a parent. I mean, those are all things that I would personally have an interest in if there was an opportunity to be a part of any one of those. So I don't know where we are with that, or if there will be any changes made. If you want to comment now, or we can comment later, whatever. The other thing I wanted to mention was about policies. I know we also talked in the last board meeting a lot about that policy, specifically about athletes. So I didn't know when we will workshop those kinds of things, because I know that we're looking at policies from a legal standpoint, but there are beefing up of policies that I know that we have an interest in, and so I'm not certain when that might happen on the calendar. I mean, obviously you're looking at them from a grammatical review. I was just noticing that we have one policy, 5.660, that is for student, singular, and it stands alone all by itself in our list if you look up policies on the internet, and then everything else is for students, plural. So there's really no rhyme or reason to that. It just was how it was set up. So anyway, I just want to ensure that we set a date, whether it's workshop, add it to a work agenda, something where we can get serious about policy updates, because that's our role. And we already talked about golden apples, so based on the board's decision, I'm sure Ms. Zanetti may be listening now, I will hand over my chicken marsala to Ms. Thrower, and she can
I like eggplant.
Okay, sorry, change that to eggplant, and I will watch from the comfort of my home as well. However, I'm going to make this one other statement. From a community spread standpoint, I believe that our health department would also agree that large gatherings have not been where we're seeing community spread. They are happening more in family, close, 20 people at your house, reunion type activities, Those gatherings that are happening in the intimacy and comfort of people's homes is where spread is occurring more often. So I ask all of the teachers who will be watching, all of the administrators, all of the folks, they may want to get together and watch to celebrate. Please be careful. Please wear your face coverings, and please be socially distanced in your homes together as much as you possibly can, because they may be wanting to celebrate together, and if we're going to have them not be in a room together, then let's say, please encourage you not to be in small rooms together either. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. And on the policy side in athletics and grades and those kinds of things, with your purview, Dr. Gullett, we'll look forward to getting, your input, perhaps after discussing it with your executive cabinet. It is an issue that we want to put on the front burner because it's academics over athletics, but at the same time, athletics are a kid's ticket out. So we just want to make sure that we are very clear in our communication and in our policy. One recent development that I'm very excited about, and I think it was presented to us at our last meeting, is that the SAT and then soon the ACT will be offered during the school day. And that, to me, is a great action to be taken. I'm very familiar with kids that wanted to take the SAT or were thinking about it in some nebulous way, and it just never really happened. So this is a great step that's going to help kids and their academics and just make it more, right there in front of them, and take away the barriers. So that's great. And as far as the committees are concerned, yes, being involved in 2 non-functioning committees is not exactly anything that any of us would want to do. So I would encourage all of us as board members to look at your assignments as they are right now and see if there's any that you feel would be helpful, and also, to Board Member Campbell so she can get on the horse and ride with us. And it's also in my mind that there's different committee needs that come up, and so I would think that you would be a board member that we would want to look to first for those that tend to come up during the year. As far as when we're going to assign committees, I think we just always need to be mindful of what's best for the district in terms of timing, and so I need to think a little bit more about that. So let's start with reviewing our own committees, and then also I've got a couple of ideas in my mind that I want to think a little more about that might suit and will meet a need. So thank you again for bringing that up.
When we're talking about the athletics, remember part of it was not just the grades, but the credit deficiency.
Well, and that leads to credit deficiency is grades. And if they're playing still, yeah. But you're right, it all goes together. Absolutely all goes together.
Chair.
Yes.
With the committees in the past, and I think I figured out maybe why there was a little bit of a gap, what happened. Usually in November, when there's a change in the chair is the one who decides the committees, or at least in the past, that's what happened. When I was a chair, then I was like, what, I looked and I was like, okay, and, or when I was my first year, whoever it was, they showed me what I was going to do that year, and that's how.
I remember getting that memo.
Yeah, and that's what kind of happened,
Value adjustment.
So, but I think what happened maybe with the August, I was here on different dates. So I know that the value adjustment board meets in August and then in May.
Right.
So I think because the same person has to do that. So I think there was some misunderstanding, like, oh, it's August because of that board, but in reality, it's November. It's just like I just finished it. So like, say my first year I had value adjustment board, I didn't go until August to do that, but I had to finish in May, and then the next person. But I think as part of being a chair and responsibilities and stuff like that, so I just wanted to talk to that a little bit. Like, I think that's what's best for the board. It's easier, and then it gives the chair the opportunity to come in, because it's hard to do it in the middle when there's board members come in and go.
Well, and I know everybody loves the committees they're on. I mean, and I get that. I understand that. I just would love to be able to have the opportunity to serve on one. So if it is the chair's purview to make those decisions, then we will respect whatever decisions that you make moving forward, as the others have in the past when the chair has made those decisions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's see. I think that through all of our conversations today, this may be a first for Nancy Thrower, but I don't have a lot, I know, to share. I continue to want to emphasize, along with all of us, that taking care of our employees through this and by extension our students is our most important priority. If they're not healthy, and then they're not going to be successful. And I was really gratified to hear from Lori Lively from Risk Management and Thomas Buss from Insurance that we are going to be able to continue to cover our employees and do all that we can. We're making progress now, and we're starting to get some momentum with the vaccine for those of us that choose to be vaccinated. My parents are getting their vaccination number 1 today at the health department, or not at the health department, at the Paddock Mall. Yep, at Paddock Mall. So these opportunities are popping up now, and that's really, really good. And I think we're all looking forward to getting this behind us. The sooner the better. I'm interested, as far as graduation, just beginning to think in those terms, and World Equestrian Center certainly pops into my mind. Maybe that could be a great venue. It would be good to get out of the weather concerns for our graduations, and find a space that we can always count on. So it'll be fun to get some updates on that going forward. And with that, I don't think I really have anything else today. Just please, everyone, hang with us. We're going to continue to problem solve as we go. And this is a total team effort, as always. So thank you for everything that everyone does. And is there anything else for the good of the cause? All right, we are going to adjourn at 11:18 a.m.